the whispering halls of St. Agatha's Street. Agatha's School for Girls had been abandoned for nearly 50 years. Hidden away in a quiet, fog-covered part of town, the old building was now overgrown with ivy, its once grand entrance buried under layers of dust and decay. No one dared to go near it. Well, no one except for 4 curious teens: Emily, Sarah, James, and Liam. It was James's idea, of course. He had a reputation for dragging his friends into weird places and pulling pranks. Emily, always up for a challenge, backed him. Sarah was more cautious, but she didn't want to look scared in front of the others. Liam, on the other hand, had no interest in ghost stories, but he couldn't say no to Emily. One Friday evening, just as the sun was beginning to set, they snuck into the old school grounds. The gate creaked as they pushed it open. Tall weeds and broken stone statues greeted them as they walked up the pathway. "Look at this place," Sarah whispered, her voice tight with nerves. "It's like it's waiting for us." "Waiting to scare us, you mean?" James laughed, brushing off her concern. "There's nothing here, just some old walls and a lot of dust." But the moment they stepped inside, the air changed. It grew colder. The shadows seemed to stretch and bend unnaturally. A strange echo filled the hall, like distant voices whispering secrets. The main hall was vast and eerie. Old paintings of stern-looking teachers lined the walls, their eyes seeming to follow the group as they moved deeper into the school. The wooden floor creaked under their feet, each step louder than the last. "Okay, we're here," Liam muttered, glancing nervously at the cracked windows. "Let's just take some pictures and go." But before anyone could respond, Emily spotted something at the far end of the hall. A flicker of movement. It was faint, almost like a shadow darting across the floor. "Did you guys see that?" Emily asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "See what?" James was still grinning, but his voice wavered slightly. "A shadow over there." Sarah shook her head, wrapping her arms around herself. "Let's just go, okay? I don't like this." Ignoring her, James moved forward, toward where Emily had pointed. The group hesitated, but followed. As they approached, a sudden bang echoed through the hall, like a door slamming shut. Everyone froze. "What was that?" Liam's voice cracked. "Wind?" James suggested, though it didn't sound convincing. But it wasn't the wind. A faint giggle echoed through the hallway, light and playful. It sounded like a little girl, and it came from behind a door to their left. "Who's there?" Emily called out, her heart pounding in her chest. No answer. Only the creak of the door as it slowly opened by itself. The group exchanged uneasy glances, but curiosity won. Emily took the lead, pushing the door open wider. Inside was a small classroom, old desks covered in dust, and a blackboard with faint chalk markings. It looked as though the room hadn't been touched in decades. But in the far corner, there was something strange. A small, child-sized chair sat facing away from them. "I don't like this," Sarah whispered again, backing toward the door. James moved toward the chair, his footsteps heavy in the silence. He reached out and touched it, giving it a light push. The chair spun around, and sitting in it was a porcelain doll, dressed in an old-school uniform. Its glass eyes gleamed in the dim light, and its lips were curled into a wide, unsettling smile. "That's creepy," Liam muttered, taking a step back. Before anyone could react, the lights flickered, and the temperature dropped to even more. The whispers grew louder, this time more distinct. The sound seemed to come from the walls, the floor, and even the ceiling. "They're here," a voice whispered. Emily turned to the others, her face pale. "We need to leave. Now." As they rushed toward the door, It slammed shut in front of them. Panicked, James grabbed the handle, pulling with all his strength, but it wouldn't budge. The whispers turned into soft giggles, echoing from all directions. "They're here." The voice from earlier sounded again, clearer now. It wasn't just one voice, it was many, all blending together. The sound filled the room, bouncing off the walls, growing louder and louder until it was almost unbearable. Suddenly the doll in the chair moved. Its head jerked to the side, its eyes locking onto them. Then, in a high-pitched, childlike voice, it said, "Stay and play with us." Emily screamed, and that seemed to break the spell. The door burst open on its own, and the group ran out of the room, not daring to look back. They sprinted through the halls, dodging overturned desks and then broken furniture, the whispers still chasing them. Doors slammed shut behind them as they ran, and the walls seemed to close in. At last, they burst through the front doors and out into the cold night air. Panting and shaking, they didn't stop running until they reached the main road, where the lights of the town seemed to welcome them back to safety. "Never again," Sarah panted, bending over to catch her breath. James, for once, didn't argue. He looked back toward the school, his face pale. What was that? None of them answered. They knew they had seen something that wasn't meant to be seen. And though they didn't talk about it again, they all knew one thing for sure. St. Agatha's wasn't just an abandoned school. Something else was there, and it was still waiting.